I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values or feelings or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Friday night stream. Still looking for a name. I see that some of you guys have some ideas in the chat, so we'll check that out in a moment. But welcome. We are here at Friday again. Get this mic out of my face a little bit there. Okay, so we've got a good topic tonight, and I'm curious to kind of see how it goes. On the one hand, I think that some of the things we have to talk about, we can't help but to rehash some things we talked about previously on my channel, but I have a lot of new subscribers, so some of you might have not have heard it either. So we'll get into that in a moment, but we are going to talk about, the catalyst for this discussion is the Eternals trailer that came out, and specifically just the great difference we see now in what we're using. The Marvel Cinematic Universe as a great example, because they've been around for so long, over 10 years, and we've seen the nature of the films from their trailers on, right from their trailers on. So we've seen the nature of their films, the kind of stories they wanted to tell, and we see it how it's drastically shifted. I've talked about it a little bit before, but we're going to do it again, especially in light of Eternals, looking backwards and so forth. So we'll get to there, but let me welcome the chat here. Wow, welcome John Malin. See you there in the chat at the bottom. I'm getting ready to scroll to the top, but I see John Malin just popped in. Good to see you. Always a pleasure. Nathaniel Zalozball is always hanging out in the chat, chatting beforehand. Great to have that. Appreciate that. Chatting with Horizon Talker. Good to see you as well. Got quite a few people here, so I won't be able to welcome everybody, but I'll welcome the folks who popped in early. Daniel, welcome. What is that? Nabil Farouk. Let's see. Who else is here? Nathaniel Zalozball and Horizon Talker just keep going at each other. Conversation. Impy, welcome. DRY Designs Network. Sorry, I get mixed up with all the names you changed. Captain Red, welcome to my dear Sound Engraver. Great to see you there. Ed Star, new channel member. Great to have you here. And yeah, okay, quite a few people more. Green Lion Girl and more. So Pseudo Badger, welcome. You guys were talking about possible names. I heard Fandom Fridays. I read Friday Night Strive. Interesting. What else did I hear? Geekdom 101 or 301 or something like that. Interesting. I like those. It's the funny thing. I'm thinking of names for this stream, and I was talking to Sound Engraver about it the other day, and I like something along the lines of like Night Class or something like that, to stick with the professor theme, but nothing just sings to me. It's like Al. I think Big Al's ruined me. Big Al has ruined me. He's such a perfectionist when it comes to names or logos or anything like that. And it drives me absolutely up the wall trying to run something by him. He didn't even like Professor Geek. He was like, you can do better. I was like, well, and the thing that drives me crazy is that he won't help you. He won't come up with anything himself. He'll just tell you how everything you came up with is subpar, So, but I feel like he's rubbed off on me a little bit because all of these, cool names I'm hearing, nothing's just like popping out at me yet, So I don't know. We'll see. You guys got some great ideas there. I'll play with them and see what we can come up with. But that doesn't mean we can't continue with these streams in the meantime. So we'll do that. Did want to say hi to you all for Big Al. He is, as you know, still waiting on internet. It's really a shame. It's somebody in Big Al's position, as he's told you guys, he's himself unable to get out, because of his wheelchair condition and whatnot. And he's confined mostly to a bed. His mother, in her 80s, she can't get out and about, and they just moved into this wonderful assisted care facility, which is great. It's a wonderful place for them. And he did all the legwork. He did all the legwork to make sure that the internet would be there before they got there. And he gets there and they hook it up and it doesn't work. And of course, what do they say? Oh, we'll be there in like a week, maybe Wednesday. I mean, it's just that's kind of unacceptable to somebody in his position where the internet is their connection to the world. It's not like he's living in the Hicks, hillbilly sticks or something like that. So yeah, but he did say to say hi. He's feeling a little disconnected from the world, but we can still text back and forth. So there's that. MC Ofke, welcome, sir. Night Culture. Interesting. Another cool. Yeah, I appreciate that. And thank you very much for the super chat. Night Culture. I think you're on the right track. I think we're all on the right track here. Something night. Yeah, Friday night school. Something like that. Comics Done Right by Professor Geeks is Asriel. Intro. Well, I'm not just going to talk about comics. I mean, of course, we'll talk about comics, as they pertain to comic media, television series, movies, and so forth. So we'll see. Looks like the video is being a little weird. The Wi-Fi vampires are over right now. So I just walked through the house and made them get off their devices right before I came on stream. That doesn't mean they listen. Let me see if I can clear up the camera a bit. If not, we'll just go to Avatar because I know the sound always comes through just fine. But yeah. So Comics After Dark, interesting. Let's see. Quality Time with the Prof. Friday Night Fun. All these are great. Yeah, Lynn Green talking about variation on TGIF. Somebody said that last time. I forgot who, but that was a cool thing. Yeah, like thank goodness it's Prof or something like that, or Prof Fridays or something like that. I don't know. So we will figure out something. Geek Crusaders. You guys are coming up with some good stuff. Heroism 101. That's pretty cool too. Well, where do we start here? Got a bunch of teasers in that thumbnail, right? I mean, we've got the Eternals, we've got the Great Reset article that came out from Time that time, and then the hero's journey with the gravestone. Rest in peace. They can't kill the hero's journey, but they're desperately trying to. They link it in their minds. Oh, it's patriarchy. It's they're trying to reset things. Let's start from this idea of this Great Reset. I put the image of the Time article, Time magazine covered there, just because I think that's the most well-known in recent cultural memory where that idea has come from. But that is nothing new. I didn't read through that whole article, but I understand the gist of it, talking about, everything was quarantined and whatnot. One of the things they were talking about, wouldn't it be great? We need to push the population into cities so that we can have the wonderful nature out there and restore and all this kind of stuff. And you can just see through every little thing they say. Of course, they want everybody in a population condensed so they can control you. That's exactly what it is. Can't have these people seeking freedom and land and the American dream and all that kind of stuff. They want control. This is something I talked about last Friday night stream, and I actually have cut out that video, and I'm going to do its own little standalone video, a part where I talk about this. But one of the things I point out is that the ideologies, the ideologues, the woke ideologues right now, and this comes ultimately from first the ivory tower of academia, and they trickled right out, into this extremist liberalist agenda in our society at every level, and in the entertainment industry, certainly in education, public education, absolutely, just at every level, certainly in the government, all through it. This was a problem because now people are just starting to figure it out. And some people are thinking it's new. No, this idea of a great reset or whatever, they have always wanted to form the world to their image. They come at you with some pretty talk about like, oh, we just want to make sure everybody has equal rights, or we just want to make sure, people are coming out and getting a space at the table, voices that previously weren't heard are heard now. Nothing wrong with any of that, right? That kind of talk, but that's a lie. It's a flat, bold-faced lie. That is not what they want. It's like when, and they know they're being dishonest. They know that they're being dishonest. It's like when you hear feminist propaganda pieces or little commercials or something like that, and they say that I'm going to go ahead and just kill the camera for tonight, guys. Sorry, it's just a little too strained for whatever reason, but you can still hear me. We're good. You see those feminist pieces, it's in an article or it's in a video or whatever, and they say, do you think men and women should be treated equally? Then congratulations, you're a feminist. No. How can you even say that boldface and take yourself seriously? No. That feminist is one of the most useless words out there. It's like saying someone's a Christian. What does that even mean? There are 1,000 different specific flavors of that you could possibly mean. And even beyond that, once you get into the different waves of feminism and blah, 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 then you talk to anybody who prescribes to one of these waves and then ask them about their methods. What are their motives? This and that. No, feminism is not just women and women should be treated equally. No, it's not that. The predominant strain of feminism, which is tied to this greater woke ideologue in culture today, is that we need to make sure you are thinking the right thoughts. It's not enough. It's not enough that this woman should have equal rights to this man. No, that man needs to be sure that he's thinking the right thoughts about that woman. They want to thought police you. They want to value police you. They are not interested in rights or laws or effect in society. They are interested in policing your thoughts. That's absolutely what they want to do. I told you guys the story. It probably has been a while since I told it, so I might as well retell it. But when I was just working as a TA, and we were just starting to teach classes as a TA, and I had we were just the TAs, so they put us all in this sort of group office. And this girl that was next to me, she had a cubicle next to me. We were talking about some of the assignments we were assigning our students, because we were just teaching like basic level college comp stuff at that point. And she was talking about these political documentaries that she was having them watch and do papers on. I said, well, and naive me, right? I said, we shouldn't have them be, teaching or learning politics from us, right? I mean, we're just teaching them how to write. And she looked at me like, oh, you poor boy. She said, no, we need to make sure they're thinking the right things. All right, and this is truly how these people think. A writing class, which is truly only there to help them teach the students how to express themselves better, clearly, more concisely through their writing. Their own thoughts. We're not there to even put a thought in their head. We're just there to help them critically think and express the writing. No, they'll turn something like that into, yes, but now we're going to use that as an opportunity to make sure they are thinking the right things. That's this, as I said in the last week's stream, this insidious agenda. They want to control you. Don't buy any of this nonsense. Oh, it's just about equal rights. It's just no. They want to control you. They want to thought police you. They won't be happy until that happens. There was a great meme the other day that I found. And it was about the Catholic Church in particular, because I have the other channel, Catholic Bible Geek, and it had like a dialogue in between two people, and it said somebody talking to the Catholic Church or whatever, and they said, "I want to do X," and the Catholic Church says, "That's fine, you're free to do it." The Catholic Church says you're free to do X, and the person says, "But you think X is wrong," and the Catholic Church says, "Yes, but you're still free to do it," and the person says, "But I want you to think it's right." And the guy says, I can't do that. I have, I have a right to think what I want about that. And it's like, why do you hate me? Why are you so full of hatred? And that's it. I mean, take it, whether they're talking to somebody like the Catholic Church or anybody that has a different view of them, they need you to approve of them in every way. And that's an old mentality. That's an old state of mind that they've been in. And we're seeing it manifest, now in silly things like safe spaces and talk about microaggressions and blah, 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 and all this nonsense. This is the agenda that they have. You need to think the right things. You need to approve of them in every way. You need to be on board. And they are trying to push this now through culture. So the idea of the Great Reset, that's a big concept, right? That article talked about a bunch of different things politically and all this kinds of stuff. My channel deals with mythology, or modern day mythology and storytelling. And this is what they're doing through mythology and storytelling. We've talked about this. This has been an issue for a lot of channels that you guys frequent on YouTube as well. maybe they don't always contextualize it like this or step back and look at the broader lens of this, but everything that Disney has been doing, what Disney has done to Star Wars, what Disney's doing to Marvel, what all of the woke ideologues have gone into the comic industry and tried to do, what they've tried to do to television, all of these places. They're taking over. They're taking over. And again, people say, oh, you're just conspiracy theorists. And like I said last week's stream, no, this isn't a conspiracy theorist. I mean, the silly reasoning that they give. I mentioned in last week's stream, it's like watching a movie where there's an invasion of alien body snatchers or something, and our main character realizes it, and he sees it, and he sees the signs, and he sees the evidence, and he tries to tell people, and they just say, no, come on, stop being such a conspiracy theorist. The examples I gave last week were, he just the aliens have moved into the White House because they're our guests. They're not running the government. Stop being so silly. And they want to put their consciousness in your body because they can't acclimate to our atmosphere. And don't knock it until you've tried it. Stop being so paranoid. There's nothing that you can tell them that will make them open their eyes once they've accepted that this is their being, their identity. That's why we call them ideologues. An ideology isn't a system of belief. It isn't something that, like a religion or something like that. Some people try and say, well, religions are just ideologies. No, you can make an ideology out of religion. Absolutely. It depends on the person, how they accept it. But no, a system of belief is fine if you take your reason and work it through at each level. An ideology is a prepackaged whole thought life, a prepackaged belief system that you're going to accept, not look at it step by step, not investigate step by step. You need that ideology because you need the identity. I need to be one of the cool kids, so I'm going to slap this label, put this bumper sticker on my car, therefore I'm accepted, and in return for that, I have to accept this large list of values. And you can't really deviate much at all in that, at all. That's what ideologues are. That's what the ideology is. So we're seeing that in our entertainment industry. It's not conspiracy theory. I don't imagine that it's, I don't know how structured it is. I don't know. I'm not saying it's, there's a secret, organization of wokeness, and no, of course not. But we do have these people going to universities. I was listening to a news story the other day about journalists in particular, and when they go to speakers, like old school journalists who are actually there to be free thinking journalists in a free press, will ask the students, what is it that makes you want to be a journalist? Why are you here? And overwhelmingly, they say to be an advocate, basically an activist, not to be a reporter, not to report on the news, but to shape culture, to shape society, by the choices the choices they make in the news stories they cover and the way they present them and so forth. So that kind of thinking, whether it's in something like journalism or writing in the entertainment industry, whatever, they're pushing them out from the ivory tower into society. They get these jobs. They get important places in these companies, positions and whatnot. And that's how they focus it. And there's no such, it used to be, we say go woke, go broke, and there's truth to that, but they just don't care. They really don't care. Look at DC Comics, case in point. Or Warner Brothers, even to go to their big granddaddy there. It's, if anybody cared about not making money, they wouldn't do this. They wouldn't keep making the decisions. They don't care. It is 100% more important to them to continue preaching the message than it is to actually make money. Occasionally you might get somebody in there with some talk about, all right, we gotta improve our profit or whatever, no one cares about that person. They can talk a big talk. It's not going to be the way they run the business at all. Fan Man, thank you for popping in for $5. Thank you for the super chat, dude. It says, just dropping in before I close up shop for the night. The behavior of the woke mob is absolutely that of a cult. Yes. Well put. Yeah. Ideology is the idea of a cult. You accept the whole prepackaged mindset and all of the beliefs that might not even be written into the system yet, but anything that comes, that's what you accept, and that's what you have to advocate for. Absolutely. So in terms of the MCU, as I said, we're going to kind of look at this as an example. it's so hard to talk about this because on one hand, I have talked about it on the channel in different moments, in different videos, in different incarnations, but we're gonna kind of funnel it all together here. It's also hard to talk about because, I mean, the MCU just used to be something incredibly special. And I'm not saying that every single movie was the most amazing quality ever. You've got people, especially real Marvel purists, from long ago, like, this movie stunk, blah, blah, blah. But it really is the very, very few people actually will speak out against the MCU in general if they're not just trying to like pit it against DC and they're more of a DC fan or something like that. I mean, the cool things that the MCU did, and we used to think this was Kevin Feige, and maybe it was. If it was, he's completely turned the corner and doesn't care about any of this anymore. But it really was an entity that cared about storytelling. They cared about honoring these characters and their archetypal rooting, their archetypal situation. So somebody like Iron Man, they're going to make an Iron Man movie, okay? Well, Iron Man's a character that was born out of Vietnam era, basically, in the disenchantment that people felt with the government and so forth. And Stan Lee has talked about, let's create a character that's basically the cultural bad guy, right? The bad guy, the millionaire, the corporatist, the weapons designer, and all that kind of stuff. And that was very much something that spoke to the Vietnam era. But then let's give him a conscience and let's do this kind of stuff to him. And he survived in the comics to the point where he could be remade in different time periods. So you think about Kevin Feige, Jon Favreau trying to make that first Iron Man film. What do you do with that? How do you synthesize all of that history? And they did it so well because what they privileged was what is his most archetypal relevance and draw to our culture. And there is that draw in every culture. You don't have to be in specifically the Vietnam era to have that sort of distrust of the military industrial complex, at times. And so him as a weapons designer and so forth, it just worked. And then the specifics of the personality, the personal character, the drawing to us, somebody who's trying to work for redemption, somebody who's trying to do the right thing and they're accepting their flaws. I mean, it was just perfect. It was great. And they didn't just take that one approach and use it for every character. I mean, I forget exactly which movie was made the very next one. I think it might be the Hulk. But Captain America, the first Avenger, you can't get a wider gulf in archetypes between somebody very cathartic motivational like Iron Man and somebody incredibly aspirational like Steve Rogers, Captain America. And they did that, and they treated him, they got the right directors on it and so forth, and they treated him with all due respect. You think about the Thor film, all the way up into like Ant-Man, all the new characters they had there, and the difference in sort of subgenres of the movies, the difference in sub-archetypes and so forth. But the one thing that they kept true to each and every one of these stories was the hero's journey. Each of these characters took the hero's journey. They had that basic arc. They had their own variations on it. And it wasn't like they were just copying each other in any way. But that hero's journey isn't an invention of the patriarchy. It's not a way to keep people down and for one group of people to hold sway over another. No, that's stupid. The idea of the hero's journey is so predominant, so intrinsic, it's so seminal to the human experience because it is a reflection on the human experience. I've talked about this before. We get up in the morning, and no matter what our day holds for us, it's the unknown. We get out of that safe space of our bed and we have to enter into the unknown. We don't know what challenges are going to face us. That's a daily example, and then we get through them. And at the end of the day, we have to reflect back on what we've been through or whatever, see how it's changed us. That's a day-to-day example, but certainly major things we go through, traveling, a move, a life change of any sort, job changes, tragedies that befall you or whatever. These are the unknown. These are the caves of the unknown. The treasure we seek is within that cave we are to enter. That's the hero's journey. This is our life experience. It's just basic human experience. And to try to subvert that and say we don't want to do that anymore, they think in their delusion, oh, we're getting away from this nonsense of the patriarchal hold on the hero. No, they're not. They're not humaning anymore. They're not telling stories that appeal to humans anymore. And the biggest example of that was Captain Marvel. The greatest example of that was Captain Marvel. That movie is such a joke. Listen to people sometime. Go out, do a YouTube search and try and find somebody who's trying to make a case for that film or trying to support that film in some way. Nothing you can say about that movie doesn't ring hollow. There was no journey. She didn't have to discover things or improve upon or do any self-work whatsoever. No self-work whatsoever. As I've said, the only thing she had to discover was how amazing she already was without having to lift a finger, and how the patriarchal system kept her down. That's the only thing she had to discover. How amazing she already was. Always was that too. The stupid flashback about, all these times in her life, and they said girls can't do that, but she stood up because she's strong. And that's not a story. That's an agenda. That's a propaganda ad. That's all that is. It's a 2-hour propaganda ad. That's not a story. There's nothing to latch onto. People don't love her character. They don't love her movie. They don't love her story anymore. And they never did, but they don't love that it's not going to be something that sticks with people and sticks around as one of the classics, because it doesn't resonate with the human experience. That's not how the human experience works. Dang, Ed Starr. You are an incredibly generous person. That is an amazing super chat, and you have been generous with those for quite a while, and don't think it's not appreciated. Never expected, but certainly not unappreciated in any way. Appreciate that. Ed Starr says, let me put it up on the screen. Ed Starr says, storytelling, especially the hero's journey, predates the invention of writing. You're absolutely right. It predates back to people telling stories around a campfire. It's as old as humanity is. The first caveman coming out of his cave and experiencing or facing a saber-toothed tiger or whatever. That's a hero's journey. In fact, you can go and look. I'm glad you pointed out predating invention of writing, because you can go look at cave paintings. I talk about this in some of my lectures, how comic books, the medium of comic books in particular, it's a visual heroic story medium. And we can trace it right back. I trace it back to like friezes and whatnot on the Parthenon, sculpture, but ultimately back to cave paintings, primitive man cave paintings. It was a way of telling story theatrically, because you think about the caves, you can see a bright, well-lit image of it today on the internet. But if you put yourself back in those days, they typically would have probably had some sort of mind-inducing drug or inhaling some fumes or whatever there in the cave, even if it was nothing more than just the smoke, in the cave, would have had a little mind-altering something. Plus, you're seeing those images depicting a hunt or something like that by torchlight. And it's an uneven surface that they're depicted on, and you've got the jumping fire of the flame, and it almost looks like a sense of movement. It almost looks like this, it was TV before TV, and yeah, storytelling has been around ever since. You can't have a human being without storytelling. I say that all the time. Consume stories responsibly, because stories are what shape us. Stories are what build our society. The stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we believe, and the stories that we spend time around. Surround ourselves with on a daily basis. These are our story shaping, our society and mind shaping stories. So yeah, it predates all of that. It's basic humanity. And when they try to change that, you get something like Captain Marvel. And I said, all of the defenses just ring so hollow that they'll try to say, no, the hero's journey is there. Some people have tried to say that, which is just a joke. They can't push that in any way. Now, one part of the Great Reset mentality, I mentioned just the one example that they said from that article about how they wanted to push the population into, city centers, make the population more centered so that they can have, it's for nature, it's for conservation and whatever. No, it's for controlling people. Another way they want to control people is they want to get rid of this idea of sovereign nations. This is a problem. You'll hear the rhetoric spoken to various different extremes, but in general, the extreme leftist woke ideology heavily privileges something like the United Nations. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an idea of nations working together. Of course not. But remember in Captain America, the First Avenger, at the very end of the movie, when Cap is fighting the Red Skull in that big ship that's on its way to New York to drop these bombs and whatnot, he says, he's fighting the Red Skull, and the Red Skull says, "I've seen the future, Captain. There are no flags." Because he's making fun of Captain America for wearing a American flag on his chest, basically, and, "Oh, you silly, you're just a tool of the government," or whatever. He says, "I've seen the future, Captain. There are no flags." And Captain America doesn't miss a beat. He says, "Not my future. Not my future." This is something that's very important to Cap, that countries remain countries. And if that means a certain division there, okay. But what is Cap doing? It's World War II. Cap's over there helping the people of Europe. There's no land invasion of Germany yet, in terms of a land invasion of America, from Germany yet. It's something he's trying to thwart there in the storyline of the film. But it's not about just to heck with the rest of the world. It's all about us. It's not about an isolationist necessarily. But there's some truth and necessity to local governance, whatever extreme you want to take that, whether it's nations. In America, we certainly have the tension at any given time between federal government versus state government. But locally, you know how to govern yourselves and the specific needs of your population and geography better than somebody over in the United Nations, for crying out loud. It's important. It's important to maintain human rights by making it culturally and geographically centered in terms of governance there. But this is something they want to do away with. We also see, we've seen this for a long time now, a real shame and an embarrassment about anything distinctly American in storytelling these days. That's why even when the film first came out, I was truly shocked that Captain America, the First Avenger was actually a thing, that they actually made a Captain America movie. I was shocked about that. I didn't think that was going to be a thing that happened, because think about all the stuff they've done with Superman. I mean, truth, justice, and the American way, you'll never hear that proclaimed again in a movie, TV series, comic book, or whatever. I remember the first time it was so stupid. It was in Superman Returns, and Perry White was talking about, let's get to all the journalists out there. Does he still stand for truth, justice, all that stuff? Like, no, you don't get to say truth, justice, and just say all that stuff and not say the American way. And I tell my students this all the time. I say that there's this deep shame, and it usually has to do with whether or not someone's happy with whatever administration is in power. And that's stupid. That's a complete and total misunderstanding of what it means by saying the American way. The American way is far bigger than any presidential administration. The American way should be far bigger than any political party. The American way, all you mean when you say that, and what it means when you say that Superman stands for the American way, is the basic foundational values that the country was built on. Give us your poor and your, whatever the quote is on the Statue of Liberty. I'm blanking on it right now. But the idea of the work ethic, social mobility, the idea of taking care of your neighbor, this heavily Christian ethic of self-sacrifice and self-serving. We talk about the American monomyth. We're going to talk about that more here in a moment. These are the things that the ideologues try to deconstruct. They don't you dare talk to them about any kind of foundational American values. Oh, no. We have to deconstruct that right away, because people came to hear them talk, there were so many disparate value systems and belief systems and cultures that came into America, blah, 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 blah. Yes, of course, it was a nation of a lot of different immigrants and a lot of different cultures and whatnot that settled here, but we wouldn't be where we are now if they weren't able to agree to some point on a shared culture, a shared society, a shared vision. And that came from the founding fathers, from the Constitution. Deal with it. I don't care how much you just don't like them now. The Constitution is not a living document. It's not something you can just change. That's the nature of our country. You don't get to just change that because of the times. But they want to. They want to desperately. And so we do see this shame in anything American. Now, this gets to my point here. I've talked a lot about my channel, The American Monomyth. So we talk about the hero's journey. And then I've done videos on specifically the American version of the hero's journey. Because there is an American version of the hero's journey, and if the hero's journey is called the monomyth, then the American version is the American monomyth. And that varies to a certain degree from, say, the German monomyth, or other countries' monomyths. And you can do studies about that. The book, The Writer's Journey, is a great resource. He talks about some of, even straight up in the introduction, I think he even goes into some of the differences. For example, you would have Germany, for example, they'd be wary of, at the time he wrote that anyway, in terms of their hero's journey, their monomyth, they'd be wary of somebody trying to take on too much power and leadership because they're the aftermath of Hitler and so forth. I think he talks about the Australian monomyth as well, would be anybody who wanted to lead or try to use sentiment or emotions to get somebody to do the right thing. They'd be wary of that as well, because you think about Australia, they've been manipulated for so long by the British government, in their history, ultimate history. So they're wary of some of that, so there are some little variations. The American monomyth, though, the American monomyth is Judeo-Christian to the core. It is about being a Christ figure. And what I mean by that is self-sacrificing, laying down your life, either literally or figuratively, self-sacrificing. That's what hero work is in the American monomyth. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to have Christian values to see that and to appreciate that. That is the fabric of the society that holds us together as Americans, that we should be self-sacrificing, self-serving to each other. Got another super chat here. MC Ofke, thank you so much. Very much appreciated for $5. Says the Captain America movie was put out just to hook audiences before advancing their agenda. It's a good point. I would say not just the Captain America movie, but also the that first segment of the MCU. That's what brought us in, because I think that, I don't know how you feel about Winter Soldier, but I love Winter Soldier because in Cap's arc, because then you have the idea of, okay, now he's out of the World War II era, where you had a very clear and present, well-defined, in every way, evil. Nazis were evil. They were doing evil things. I mean, very few people were conscientious objectors to World War II. You had some, certainly, but that was one of the wars, historically speaking, where most people got on board and thought, this is something that needs to be fought. We've got to do something about this. Evil was well-defined. And then you drop him in modern day, where you've got corrupt agencies and the idea of S.H.I.E.L.D. infiltrated by Hydra. And what does Cap do at that point? How does, that's his journey that he's on. That's his struggle that he's thinking about in the beginning of the movie. How do I deal with being true to my values when I'm in this new context where I can't see the bad guys? I can't see the evil. I don't know who they are. I don't know who to trust. How does this work out? And that's something that people will say too, when they try to defend something like Captain Marvel. They'll say, well, you talk about aspirational heroes all the time and how they shouldn't have to overcome moral failings or face great tragedies to be good. And so how dare you talk about that? But then you can't handle Captain Marvel because she doesn't have any moral failings. No. First of all, different archetypes. Captain Marvel is not anything like an aspirational hero at all. But look at Captain America, completely aspirational. He has to figure out, and he has to ask himself and question himself, can my values, can everything that I stood for still work in this time? What do I do with it? How do I function? He's unsure about it. He has to learn, and he has to learn from other characters like Falcon and Winter Soldier. It was great, to continue his arc in Civil War. What does he do with that now that he's figured out how to operate in modern times? What does he do when his very closest allies suddenly turn against him, like Iron Man and the whole Hero Registration Act and whatever? So that's you can press on that, and you can have growth and development even in aspirational heroes. Captain Marvel had none of that. None of that. It was all about realize how much you don't even have to try because you're amazing. You're amazing. You're a woman. Roar. That was all there was to it. So you've got these arcs and this wonderful example of the American monomyth played out in not just the Captain America movies, but Thor, Iron Man, like I said. It was the Avengers, the Avengers coming together. That was a wonderful film, that first movie, about them trying to figure out where's the balance here. How do we come in together, work for a common good, but maintain autonomy? How do they not become S.H.I.E.L.D.'s puppets, yet still join together to work together and save the world? How do they do that without, the ultimate example of the zombie mentality was Loki and his staff, and how he totally took over your mind with the Mind Stone. You know, you had different shades of that, different visions of that. And the film was about these characters trying to navigate the various degrees of that. And what did they decide? They decided to maintain their autonomy, yet work together for a common goal. Become the Avengers. It was a wonderful idea. And a wonderful film because of that. And the universe carried that through. Eventually, by the time we get to Captain Marvel, and they tried to make her, this was a subtle, just an evil little thing they did at the end of that film, trying to make her the reason why the Avengers got their name, right? Her Avenger was her call sign, you know, on her ship. So that inspired Fury to call the Avengers the Avengers. Baloney. That is ridiculous. What a cheap, ignorant way to try to retcon something in. No. And it takes away, even though we never heard Captain America called the Avenger or anything in that first film, calling the Captain America movie Captain America the First Avenger establishes the fact that the team and the values and the things that the team of the Avengers fight for is based on what Cap established. He was the first superhero. The first superhero in the Marvel Universe. You know, in that timeline of the MCU. Now we have something like the Eternals. And to begin with, I'll echo what just about every remotely intellectual or critical thinking person has said. This trailer is so boring. It's so boring. Let's start there, and then we'll get into some of it, to linking it to what I've been saying before. We don't really have any clear and present evil. They talk about a threat, but what kind of threat could it possibly... Think about it. If these group of the Eternals have been there watching humanity, but not interfering through Loki invading, through Ultron about to cause a cataclysmic, you know, world-ending event, through Thanos himself and the Infinity Gauntlet, and that whole... If those dangers they set back quietly and happily and decided not to interfere, and now you're telling us there's a danger that's so big that they've decided to interfere, and you're not even going to hint at that in the trailer, that tells me you've got nothing. You certainly don't have anything that makes sense in terms of that story. There's just nothing there, and people say, oh, it's just a teaser. No, even teasers should give more than that. It's incredibly boring, and it speaks to the fact that the movie, they've got nothing in the movie. And I'll talk about why they have nothing in the movie in a second. What do we see the trailer doing, though? We see the trailer glorying in this team of characters. Now, I never read The Eternals, Jack Kirby's The Eternals. I know sort of the general gist of them, and it's pretty fascinating. It's pretty cool. It's not really the kind of comic book that I would gravitate toward. I like heroes, superheroes. You know, I'm not so much somebody who likes to read like mythology in comic, like proper, like space mythology or something like that in comic books. You know, I like the hero genre. I like that. And the hero genre, the comic book superhero. All right, let me explain this. The comic book superhero is intrinsically American. You do not have a comic book superhero story if you remove everything essentially American from the story. It doesn't work. Comic book superheroes in particular, and I don't mean comic books in general, and I don't mean the basic idea of a hero or even somebody with a secret identity. I'm talking about comic book superheroes and all of the tropes and all of the accoutrements that entails. That is uniquely American, and it happened in a unique time in America, and it proved relevant across times because the tensions and the needs of the culture that latched on to Superman and to Batman and to Wonder Woman, they proved that those needs and culture, they were still relevant. And that was why Stan Lee was able to do the Marvel Age, you know, in a different time after World War II, and still bring this idea of this comic book superhero in a slightly different, you know, slightly altered way, but it was still that seminal American fighting for these values and so forth. And it's been relevant in American culture ever since. Now, I do not mean to imply in any way that, if you're not from America, you can't appreciate comic book superheroes. And I also don't mean to imply that different cultures and different countries can't have their own versions of comic book superheroes. Sure. But the MCU is built on the American monomyth, as we just described. with these heroes, and that means it's built on the American comic book superhero. With Captain Marvel, they tried to do a drastic left turn. We've talked about this before, but a left turn, a change from the American superhero archetype, from the American monomyth. They no longer wanted to tell that story. And what we saw was that hard left turn. So Endgame that came right after it, suddenly you have Captain America, of all people, being selfish in the end, deciding, I'm not going to stick around and help you guys anymore. I'm not going to keep up with the relationship that I've already developed with Sharon Carter. I'm just going to go back and be with Peggy now, turn my back on everybody. I'll show up as an old guy and ignore all of the character development that we did with Bucky, and I'll just drop the shield in Sam's lap because diversity points, yay. This was, even though there were some really cool things in Endgame, by the end of it, that Captain America that we had there was not the American monomyth Captain America. Hard left turn at that very end there. Same thing with Thor. Same thing with Professor Soy Hulk. Same thing with all of these nonsense characters that they did in that movie, because Captain Marvel had cued the turn. We're no longer interested in telling American superhero comic book films, comic book superhero movies. We're no longer interested in the American monomyth. Now they're wanting to do something different. And their thought is that the American audiences are just going to shut up and go along, get in the bag. You don't get to say anything. Accept diversity, you racist, you bigot, you misogynist, blah blah blah, whatever they want to try to shame you for dare to have a differing opinion from them. That's what they're thinking will happen, and we've seen them try to go off. Everybody's going after that sexy China box office money or whatever. It's one thing to be mindful of supply and demand. Movies want to make money, so you want to do a hero that'll appeal to a large audience there that you have in China. Sure. Okay, whatever. Nothing wrong with that. But taking this whole mythology that's such an intrinsic ingrained in Americans' culture, take that mythology and try to break it apart and just make it something else is not okay. It's degrading and not good for culture. And it's horrible for just the storytelling in general, because you're not basing it on the hero, not to say nothing of not basing it on the American monomyth, but to not even base it on the hero's journey in general. So what do we see in the Eternals trailer? We see these characters just like, aren't they so cool together? Oh, there's this guy, there's this guy. They don't really bear any resemblance to the cursory research I did on these characters in the comics. Sometimes, if you look at some of the more modern day adaptations, since Marvel went, totally woke off the handle, all new, all different Marvel and so forth, you might see some resemblances because they've already altered the character there. But even the names of these Eternals characters, you think Gilgamesh, Circe, Icarus, even though they're spelled slightly differently, these are echoes of Western mythology, Greece and Mesopotamia there with Gilgamesh and whatever. But this is the roots of Western mythology. And what do you see in this movie? You don't see anything. They very carefully didn't show anything remotely American in this trailer at all. And I doubt there's much in the film anyway. And it doesn't have to be set in America. It doesn't have to be, nobody has to be waving a flag. What I'm pointing out is how how it plays into this agenda. Rather than superheroes, rather than individuals standing up and self-sacrificing and saying, this is going to cost me a lot of personal torment and a personal cost to me, but I need to stand up and lay it on the line because others are suffering and others need help. You're not going to see that in this film. The trailer just had them sort of laughing. That stupid joke at the end was it was cringe, obviously. It was so unearned. People talk about, so the one girl who's supposed to be Sprite, I guess, she looks like a typical non-binary woke, poster child. Doesn't look like the character Sprite at all from the comics. But she says, well, now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are not here. So you notice that subtlety. People have pointed it out, but Iron Man, he's Iron Man, but oh no, Steve Rogers, he's just Captain Rogers. No, Captain America, that's just a title. Anybody can have that. No, he's just Captain Rogers, so that they can try and push this nonsense of Cap Falcon down your throat more. It is true that the mantle was handed down to Bucky in the comics, and then when they tried, with the Nick Spencer tried to make it work with Falcon, it never did. It is true that mantle could be handed down, but even when Bucky had it, it was always under the shadow of Steve Rogers. I mean, Steve Rogers, even long before that, when he went off and became Nomad in the comics, the Captain America mantle was indelibly linked to Steve Rogers. It's not a mantle that can just be thrown around and it's a position that any old body can fill. No, it's indelibly linked. So that was very much on purpose, them saying Captain Rogers and not Captain America at the end of that trailer. But now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are gone, who will lead the Avengers? And one of the guys, I guess he's playing Icarus, maybe? I don't know. It's like, oh, I'll do it. And then they just all look at each other and kind of laugh. That is the most unearned, completely unearned attempt at a joke. We don't know anything about these characters. The trailer didn't even attempt to show us how this Icarus character could be a little of a loose cannon or something like that. Like if you're going to make a joke at the end, make it work. Let's see him drop the ball a little bit or be kind of goofy at some point in the trailer. And then at the end, when he says, "Oh, I'll be the leader," and they all kind of laugh at him, at least we can kind of get the joke a little bit. But no. Also, they're all around a table eating, because the ideologues are obsessed with eating. They're obsessed with breaking down anything like a body, a healthy body image, right? Body positivity, all of this nonsense. We don't get a villain. It's just the most boring trailer in the world. There's no way in the world that trailer would be even remotely worthy of the media attention it's getting if it wasn't part of the MCU. And not just part of the MCU, but a part of this critical juncture in people who are somehow fooling themselves that the MCU is still something they want to follow. That's the only reason this film's getting any press. Again, they're trying to figure out how in the world do you move forward from this point. You've killed off every original dynamic and character and the people that really the audiences really cared about. You got some of them surviving, Ant-Man, Spider-Man, so forth, or whatever. But you've killed all of that off. You've made it abundantly clear that you are going in a 100% different direction. How do you even make that remotely interesting? And you also see in the articles that I've read about the Eternals, so they tried to do a little bit of cursory sort of, research on it, so I could not be just totally ignorant, talking about it here. Because like I said, I'm not an Eternals reader from the comics or anything. But every article talked about the director, Zhao, whatever her name is, and, a woman of color. A woman of color is directing this. A woman of color directing this film. Look, there's nothing wrong. You can have a person, woman, man, any ethnicity, whatever, but the fact that that's the selling point. That's very clear. That's the selling point. That a woman of color is doing this movie. It's almost like that's her qualification. I've never heard of anything else she's ever done. But that's that, and that is, we see that is the qualification. That's this kind of intense affirmative action mindset. That your qualification is your victim points on that intersectional feminist card. How many victim points can you punch on your card? That qualifies you for a job. That qualifies you for people passing over more qualified candidates from a less victimized people group, so that you can have the job. And what is that flying in the face of? The work ethic, the American work ethic, the American ethic of social mobility. We know it hasn't always worked out well. We know there's been, obviously slavery in our country and racism and sexism. There's been all these kinds of things in the country. You can't deny that. And those have been impediments, absolutely, to what should be the work ethic of social mobility. But the answer isn't to throw the whole work ethic and meritocracy out the window. No, that's stupid. You don't just throw it all out because it hasn't been properly implemented. You fix it and you properly implement it. You don't throw it all out. And that's what this sort of affirmative action kind of idea does. So this is what they're doing with the director and all of that. I imagine with the cast too. Like I said, I don't know, but these characters I'm seeing on screen don't look a whole lot like the original characters that I've seen. Maybe from sort of the new woke Marvel comics nonsense and whatnot, but it's not that. So they're removing everything distinctly American from the film. And again, I don't mean that it has to be set in America. What I'm talking about when I say American is the tie to what is intrinsic to the comic book superhero, which is the American monomyth. I am seeing in chat here, I just wanted to throw this out because I just see it. Archie Bear, my good friend Archie Bear, not good friend. I don't know you that well, but you're awesome, and I really like you. And you've I've got to show this off, but he's Black and White will launch this summer, and that's great because Black and White, the first volume, was really awesome, and so I want to give him this free little shout out because he also sent me this, which I brag about. and share all the time whenever I can. We'll see how much the camera cooperates here with me. But this is the RT Bear print that he sent me, which I have framed right behind me on the wall to a smart geek. Just couldn't be happier, couldn't be prouder of it. And yes, so check him out for the Black and White Volume 2 that will launch this summer. The first volume was excellent. I've got my own copy. Got out of the practice of doing reviews, so I never reviewed it, but I should get back into that. Oh, thank you, Art. He said, we are good friends for sure. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Art's awesome. So yeah, we've had Mr. John Malin, Mr. Art Bear on the show. A lot of good, what's the word I'm looking for? He got me so flustered. It was so cool to have Art Bear on the stream. No, good endorsements. There you go. That's the word. We'll see how the camera works here for a little bit longer. We'll check that out. So no American monomyth basically means no American superhero. And if you think of the idea of the Eternals, they're not superheroes. They're not. They're comic book characters, but they're not really superheroes. At times in the past, they could have been approached and implemented as sort of superhero-esque. Like I've seen some of the old covers, Icarus against the Hulk and stuff like that, and that could be kind of cool. But they're not individuals. They're not American monomyth protagonists who are normal people who rise up and have given this challenge and decide to do the right thing for the world. They're not that, So it's indicative of this hard left turn. Now, people are already saying when it comes out, it's not going to do well. It's not going to do as well as the other ones. And defenders, of course, are trying to say, "Oh, you people are so stupid. You said that about Guardians of the Galaxy too, and that did amazing." Completely different story. Completely different story. Yes, if you were saying that Eternals isn't going to make it just because these are characters that people don't know, then that would be similar to what people were saying about Guardians of the Galaxy, which didn't work at all. That film was wonderful and did incredibly well. It's the approach. It's the approach. The Guardians of the Galaxy, even though only one was human, Star-Lord, all of these characters were incredibly human in their makeup, trying to atone for past wrongs, suddenly trying to be better. I love, Groot and Rocket, for instance, and even Drax, in his, when he finally comes to the realization and knows what he has to do and stuff and sees the wrongs that he's done, this great evil that the universe is going to suffer unless they, rogues that they are, completely unqualified, thugs that they are, crooks that they are, they're the only ones in the right situation and with the right tools in that right situation to actually be able to overcome that evil. And it's a wonderful story of how doesn't matter what you've been through, there's never too late to stand up and do the right thing. What do we see that in the Eternals movie? The trailer's not giving us anything like that. The trailer's just telling us, like these guys, think they're funny, laugh at their jokes, like these guys. This is your new Marvel universe, guys. They're at different parts of the world. It's international. We got our human rainbow. They hit all of the nice woke points. Like them. Make sure you like them. Make sure you laugh at their little joke at the end. Be excited. This is your new MCU. What's exciting about that? What on earth is exciting about that? And you take into account the other nonsense that they've got coming out. They've already talked about Captain Marvel with Miss Marvel now, Kamala Khan. Wow, that's great. They've still got the characters like Ant-Man and Wasp and Doctor Strange, but notice how they are already showing that they're going to be subjugated by the woke characters, right? We're already going to subjugate Strange to Wanda in some way or another. I guarantee you any new incarnation of Ant-Man is going to be 100% purse puppy of Wasp. I didn't think that was necessarily the case in Ant-Man and Wasp. I know some people did, but no, I thought that was actually a good telling of them meeting of minds and working together. A good actual meeting of equality there. But that won't be the case going forward. It won't be. In fact, I guarantee you the next Ant-Man movie, I haven't read any stories about this. Maybe it's out there already or maybe not. But I guarantee you it'll be about Cassie, his daughter, because of that stupid 5-year jump they did. And she in the comics does become, I forget her name, but she becomes, a hero with that ability as well, with the tech. But this is what it'll be all about. All about the intersectional feminist victim card carriers. Who's got the most points? they're the ones that are going to be shining in this new Avengers universe, and it won't have any human resonance. It won't have any appeal to viewers, not because they're women or because they're minorities. No, of course not. That's ridiculous. The characters who existed for that, Black Widow, Falcon, think about Black Widow and the resonance she had. We never got the proper Black Widow movie we should have. This new one's going to be nonsense. We know that from what the writer has come out and said about her agenda already, right on her sleeve. But you think about Black Widow and anything we knew about her from the MCU movies, not even having her own film yet, we knew that she could kick butt just from Iron Man 2, right? And in the Avengers film, we learned about her having that past that she's trying to overcome. And especially in Winter Soldier, we learned about her really trying to do the right thing. And, that's appealing. That's engaging. That makes us as an audience want to connect with them. We're not going to see, what can you connect with Captain Marvel? She realized she was already awesome, so I'm really already awesome too, and I've never done anything wrong. It's just always been what people have done to me. I haven't done anything wrong. Other people have held me back. That's the lesson she teaches young girls. That's not reality. That's not going to serve you well as a heroic inspiration, because that's not the world. That's not the real world. You do make mistakes, and you do need to be better. You need to work on yourself, self-work. That doesn't mean shrugging off the chains that other people have put on you. No, it means being better. In a lot of ways, especially for somebody who may or may not be, under the thumb in culture to some degree or another. So yeah, it's we're gonna have Captain Marvel. Who else will we have? We'll have WandaVision, or Wanda rather. And again, Wanda, things were done to me, and I have it to that's the whole point of that series. Falcon, who was a wonderful character. Now his entire arc is about how the world's not treating me fairly. I should be Captain Marvel, but the world's not ready for it, and blah, blah, blah. This is the one story that they're telling with each and every one of these characters, who will be the new Avengers ultimately. You take the original Avengers, they all had very different stories. That wonderful first movie, I keep saying, you had somebody like Iron Man or Thor. They were kind of similar in trying to overcome a speckled past, trying to do the right thing with their sort of authority, power, quote unquote, royalty or whatever, that they have, trying to do the right thing. But you had somebody like Captain America who always did the right thing, but is trying to figure out how to do the right thing in this new context, which is very scary. And then you got somebody like the Hulk who is so divided. He does the right thing all the time, but these things happen to him that out of his control. How does he embrace that shadow of himself? How does he embrace his shadow self, the Jungian shadow? That's what the Hulk is. It's a wonderful story. You've got all these different characters bringing different things to the table in different stories, but not the new Avengers. The new Avengers are each and every character that may or may not make up the new Avengers. They're just all about throwing off the chains of the patriarchy or, heteronormative society or white society or whatever. Things have been done to me that are unfair, and I just need to shine and show everybody how I'm already awesome. That's not the human experience. That's not. Things can be done to you, and things unfair are done to you, but the lesson from that isn't to whine about it, isn't to talk about how much of a victim you are. It's to rise above it. I mean, who do we celebrate? Think about the characters in American history that we celebrate who were actually quite put upon. I think, I teach the narrative of Frederick Douglass, the narrative of a life, Frederick Douglass. It's a long title. I get it wrong all the time, but I teach that in my classes. And, that's the reason we celebrate Frederick Douglass. We don't celebrate individual people that had to deal with slavery. I mean, that we do in general, we recognize them and realize the horror that they had to go through, but they don't rise to the top as heroes. The ones that rise to the top as heroes are Harriet Tubman's, are Frederick Douglass's, the ones that, in spite of that adversity and the horrors that were done to them and that should never be done again, in spite of that, they bettered themselves. Think about Frederick Douglass. If you don't know his story, in spite of being a slave, he pulled some kind of Tom Sawyer shenanigans to learn how to read and write. He learned how to do this. He learned how to do that. It's not a commentary on, so anybody can do that and slavery's okay because he did that. Of course not. What idiot thinks that? No. We celebrate him because a human being overcame that great, horrid adversity, bettered himself to the point where he escaped, and then he was able to serve other people who were victimized by that. That's a flat-out hero story right there. I mean, the life of Frederick Douglass, talk about an American monomyth. That's wonderful. But they're not telling Frederick Douglass stories. No, they're telling unnamed slave stories who, look at what's happened to this person. And it's horrible. It's horrible. Things happen to him, but that's not the story we can follow. We can't follow that person in terms of a hero story because it's not teaching us how to overcome. That's what we want to do. If we're going to overcome evils in society, if we're going to overcome evils that we ourselves are capable of, we need the stories of those who follow the hero's journey, overcome adversity, reflect back on it, integrate it into their lives, come back from the hero's journey with an upgraded status quo. That's what we need. But that's not the story that the ideologues are interested in telling. That's not the story that the MCU is remotely interested in telling you. And I'll wrap this up by saying one more time, you're going to think I'm sounding like a broken record, but it needs to get out there. Don't complain about it if you're going to watch it. I can't fathom people who message me hearing my videos and say, oh my gosh, did you see WandaVision? Oh, it's just like you said, blah, blah, blah. Don't tell me that. Don't even act like you got some sort of morally superior leg to stand on when you just watched it. You just knowing what it was, went in and supported it and watched it, and you're tweeting about it and you're whatever. As I said, they don't work for the money. It doesn't matter if they lose profits. The agenda is more important to them. But ultimately, that can only go so far in terms of, well, companies not doing well and being sold, for example. We've had all the kind of shenanigans of that going on. DC Comics, they didn't care. They didn't care what was selling or not. They were just going to keep doing their nonsense, going even more and more woke, following in Marvel's footsteps, to the point where AT&T buys them, and then somebody's got to buy that from them, and then so forth. And these new owners who don't care about the properties, don't care about the mythic folklore that they're acquiring, just care about how we can make this service to our own ends. And as a result, ultimately, I maintain, and people can disagree with me if this they want. I know Big Al disagrees, but I think the best thing, given our current cultural, situation right now, the best thing that can happen is for these characters to go into the public domain. And people say, oh, but then anybody can write horrible stories about them. I'm like, well, that's happening now. People are writing nothing but horrible stories about them, at least in the public domain. We could also write the true blue iconic stories about them. And then that could rise to the top just basically through character appeal from the actual supply and demand. They're not letting us do supply and demand right now because they're controlling all of the supply. They're not following. They're saying, oh, you demand this? Okay, we'll supply it. They're saying, you stupid public, you need to demand the right things. Well, we're not going to give you that. We're going to just keep giving you this until you learn how to demand it. What? That is so absurd. My dear Sound Engraver sending me a super chat. Much appreciated as always. So they don't need money. They need relevance. Yep. Yeah, that's the thing. So when people say, oh, I didn't pay for it. I just downloaded it. That doesn't matter. You're still giving them cultural relevance by watching it, discussing it, talking about it, ultimately leading people to it. Now, you might say, well, why are you talking about it, Prof? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it's another thing. It's quite a different thing to say, look, this is where culture's going. This is where we shouldn't follow. This is what we shouldn't support. It's quite a different thing than to cross over the line and say, OMG, did you see that first episode? It was so bad. Arr. These videos that do, these channels that do that, I'm breaking down every episode of Batwoman so that you don't have to watch it. I don't need you to watch it. I don't need you to give it to support for me to know that I shouldn't watch that horrible garbage dumpster fire of a series. That's just somebody wanting clicks. That's somebody can't let go, has to keep watching it, So yeah, wrapping up. I'll kind of give that short shrift because I talk about it all the time. But yeah, we need to stop supporting this stuff. That means not watching it. That means not making it, feeding the Twitter hashtags or the search algorithms or whatever. That means saying no. That's all there is to it. Saying no, simply saying no. And what do you focus on instead of that? Well, you focus on Black and White by R.T. Bear. You focus on John Malin's. No, John Malin, don't kill me. I'm blanking on your title, your comics title. The Monsters. I've got the volumes. They're so good, but I'm blanking on it now. I'm sorry. I'll let you beat me up later. But yeah, you focus on the the news stories that are being told, and from all different kinds of sources, or you tell your own stories if you're a writer. If you can tell your own stories, that's wonderful. Start on that. Graveyard Shift. Thank you, Horizon Talker. Graveyard Shift. Yeah, I need to catch up on Cyberfrog myself too. Actually, I'm a little bit behind on that. Need to get, I think, the last volume or something. But yeah, all of this good stuff is out there. You know, we need to do that. You know, to support that. Find what you like. You know, it doesn't mean that just because something's indie, you have to support it. No, find what you like within that. There are enough flavors being offered. And it's not just, you know, big campaigns and stuff too. I mean, people are doing things and just releasing it, webcomics online and so forth. You know, I'm the kind of person that likes to hold something in my hand, but you go on Amazon, there are plenty of people, you know, this is probably what I'll do in the future too, is just print on demand through Amazon. You know, just upload it there and then they print it and sell it and everything. And that's a viable option too. And if we turn our backs on that kind of thing and start feeding our need for story from other sources, then it's only a matter of time. Even if they don't get on board because they're losing profits, it's only a matter of time for the very ship that they're on to sink, and they can't put out these stories anymore, these messages anymore. So, you know, that's all. That's all I've got to say there. So let me check the time. Yep, it's 11:13. I go usually about an hour with these, and I'm over that now. But I'll wrap up. I'll see if there are any sort of questions in the chat here. I saw a few comments as I'm going through, but I get on a roll and I'm talking about it. But Santa Graver says, see, if I was in Virginia, I could go tell those Wi-Fi vampires to get off. Well, they eventually did. You see the signal clearing up here now. But yes, come to Virginia. Santa Graver will be here soon. Soon. So that'll be nice. People tagging me here. Spidey rules. The human rainbow in the MCU Eternals makes Captain Planet look subtle. Captain Planet. Power is yours. Power of my mullet. Leia plus size, the woke MCU has totally screwed over Bucky Barnes. The boy has been mistreated and not respected. That's so true. I mean, Bucky Barnes, they really drew from really cool comic arcs for the MCU. And there's a lot in the comics that they didn't even put in the movies because they couldn't, you know. And I do think ultimately, I wish that even though I love Captain America Civil War, I do wish they'd have taken their time a little bit more and have drawn out the Bucky redemption story there. But what a great character. And that he was such a part of Steve's motivation. I mean, Steve Rogers' motivation for being Captain America, for continuing to, you know, Bucky is a part of that in every way. And when they had that stupid scene at the end of Endgame, after they've already had Steve Rogers do the unthinkable, which is just turn his back on hero work and just go ahead and do his own thing. When he comes back and Bucky and Sam are both there, this is their friend. These are people that Cap at that point hasn't seen in ages. He's an old guy at that point. Doesn't even talk to Bucky. Doesn't even just, no, Sam, come here. You, varsity guy, be the new Cap. That's bad storytelling. That's bad story. They've turned their back on so many arcs that they already set up. And Bucky just tanked, you know. The story with Sharon Carter and all the nonsense that they're doing now in the series with her, that's completely turning their back on the story arc they already built up. I've already talked before about how the Hulk, Professor Hulk idea in Endgame was such a ball drop of the storyline they were establishing with him through Age of Ultron, Ragnarok, and Infinity War. You know, they'd established a specific storyline they were going for, and how do they wrap that up? They just get him to do a quick sort of exposition dump at a cafe, and there we go. That's done. That's horrible writing. How can people defend this? How can people remotely defend this? Horrible writing. Horrible. So, all right. I'm running out of steam. I need some food. I need to do some homework, which I don't really want to. Just kind of suffering for lack of motivation. But I'll get there. Lynn Green, Professor Geek, and Sound Engraver are so cute. Thank you. We are pretty cute, aren't we? Impy says, can you give a shout out to my dad who recently passed away and longtime super fan? Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about that, Impy. I'm sorry to hear about that. Yeah. Well, prayers to you and your family, and definitely sorry about that to your dad, but it was a big Superman fan. Absolutely shoot up. That's horrible. Schooner Tuna says, I agree. Public domain is best place for these heroes now. let me tell you, I have seen better Star Wars and fan fiction than what is coming out from Lucasfilm. Also, EU still rocks. Amen, amen, amen. Right. Absolutely. Private Eye says maybe you should call your show a cup of pepper. Professor Key, a cup of pepper. I don't know what that means. I know getting salty means a cup of pepper. I don't know what that means, but thank you. So, yeah, again, sorry to hear that, Impy. He'll be played out with the theme song. That's what he wanted. That's awesome. Wow, that brings a tear to my eye. He'll be played out with the I'm guessing you're talking about the John Williams Superman theme. Well, yeah, prayers to you and your family. Sorry to hear about that. So yeah, that's all I got for tonight, guys. I'm out of steam. I'm gonna go rejuvenate, get my introversion recharge on, and try and do some work and whatnot. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you so much for all the super chats. It's so appreciated. I do have a video that's going to release tomorrow. It's actually part 2. I revamped it was a pre-show I did where I talked about the archetypes of non-human characters, specifically the, what was the first one? I just released it. The monsters, the aliens, and the machines. And it was a pre-show I did, so I gave the monsters pretty good focus, but I noticed my time was getting kind of short, so I gave aliens and machines a little bit of short shrift, but it's still a pretty interesting exploration I do there. And it was an old video without images or anything like that, so I totally revamped it and made that. So the second one about aliens is coming out tomorrow, and then I've got the Culture War snippet coming out Sunday from last week's stream. So yeah, I'm trying to keep to a video a day as much as possible. I might drop the ball on that occasionally, but as much as I can, and the algorithms are rewarding me for it, so that's good. But yeah, thank you, Ed Star. Excellent commentary. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Yes, happy Memorial Day weekend to everyone. Have a great, hopefully you've got a 3-day weekend, but even if you don't, enjoy. And we'll be back with more stuff. Knights of the Old Republic. I think I have about one more game stream, which will probably be Tuesday again, since we're waiting on Al's internet. But the Darth Bane trilogy book study is coming shortly after that. More Inspiration of Heroes streams coming up. Awesome stuff here on the channel, so stay tuned, and thank you guys so much. None of it's possible without you, and until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love.